Hi everyone, I hope you're all doing really well. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Malin, and today I want to show you how to make a dish called Shakshuka. Shakshuka is a delicious North African breakfast and brunch dish, but it's also really good for lunch or dinner, served with a nice salad on the side. I first encountered this dish when I was at uni and my Israeli friend Sivan made it for me. And I think it's a really popular dish there as well and in other parts of the Middle East, and now it's spread also to Sweden and plenty of other places. Traditionally, this dish consists of eggs poached in a chunky and flavorful tomato sauce, but the recipe I'll be sharing with you today will be vegan, of course, and it's based on this memory that I have of my friend making it for me. But instead of the eggs, I'll be making a tofu egg that I'll whisk up in my blender and then cook in the sauce. Really, the sauce is the main player anyway, to be honest, and it's delicious, made with really good summer tomatoes, of course. But I'm in the winter, and I also think this is a great dish to do when you have some tomatoes that are a bit bruised or about to go off or are not that flavorful really to eat raw, because when you cook the tomatoes, you'll bring out the best in them even when they're not perfect. So basically, I think this is a dish that's always a good idea. It's always yummy. But before I get into how to make it, I want to thank Squarespace for sponsoring this video and tell you a little bit more about them. Squarespace is an all-in-one website builder with lots of great tools to make it easy to build a beautiful and well-functioning site without any previous knowledge about coding or website building. Personally, I've used Squarespace to create my online food photography portfolio, and I really like that it is so easy and intuitive to use. There are plenty of themes, font combinations, and color combos on Squarespace to get you started, and there are themes for many different purposes, so it's great for everyone from business owners and e-commerce all the way to creatives and bloggers. So if you're thinking about creating a website for any purpose, check out squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch your site, go to squarespace.com/goodeatings for 10% off your first website or domain. So let's get to making our shakshuka now. I like to start by prepping the tofu mixture first so that it is ready to go when you need it later. And it is really very simple, but best done in a good blender. But you could also use a stick blender if you don't have a standing blender. And I use firm tofu for this, which I've just squeezed any excess liquid out of. And then I'm just gonna crumble this into the blender and add some flavorings. To serve 3 to 4 people, I use 200 grams of firm tofu. I also add in 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast and a 1/4 teaspoon each of garlic powder and onion powder. For an eggy flavor, I also use 1/2 teaspoon of kala namak or black salt. And then to thicken everything, I'm using 1 teaspoon of cornstarch. And finally, I season with a little bit of black pepper. Then to blend this smooth, I add a 1/4 cup of unsweetened soy milk, which will help combine everything and loosen it up. Then I just blend it all until it's super smooth, and I like to use my tamper for this, but again, you could use a stick blender here if you don't have a standing blender. Alright, so now that this tofu mixture is all done, I'm going to just set it aside or set it in the fridge while I prep the veg and I cook the sauce. As I understand it, you can make shakshuka in many different ways. It could have a variety of veg in the sauce itself. I've even seen it with chickpeas inside the sauce. I'm not sure this is very traditional, but I think it's a great way of boosting the satiation factor. And I've even had a green shakshuka in London last year, which was made with leek and lots of herbs, and that was really good. But I'm going to keep it simple today and make my sauce with just some onion, garlic, red bell pepper, and of course tomatoes. If you're in the middle of winter like myself right now, fresh tomatoes can be really expensive. I just wanted to let you know that you can make a really delicious shakshuka using canned whole or chopped tomatoes as well. And I'll make sure to leave a little note about that in the recipe link in the description box, where you can also see the whole recipe written out if you want that. But first things first, we need to prep the veg, and I'm going to start by just dicing up these tomatoes. To make the the sauce, I use 700 grams worth of tomatoes, and I just dice them roughly. You don't want the pieces to be too big, but you also don't really need them to be particularly even in size or shape, so don't feel that you need to be precious about it at all. To give the sauce a bit more body and flavor, I'm using 1 bell pepper, and this is a pretty big one. You'd want a big or a medium-sized one at least, or you could use 2 smaller ones. And then you just want to chop them into bite-sized pieces that cook well into the sauce. When it comes to garlic in this dish, I think you can go pretty big. So I'm using 5 cloves here, and I just like to chop them quite fine, but again, I don't think you need to be particularly precious about it. The final item up for veg prep for this dish is a brown onion that I also just peel and chop pretty roughly, but you could actually use a red onion here or a white onion. I think they all go really well. When all the chopping is out of the way, it's time to start cooking the shakshuka, and I start with 2 tablespoons of olive oil in a skillet, and once that's hot, I go in with 1 teaspoon of cumin seeds, which will start a really nice base for the flavors to build up in this dish. Once the seeds are really fragrant, after 1 or 2 minutes, I go in with the onions and I cook them down for about 4 or 5 minutes until they're translucent and maybe have caught a little bit of color around the edges. Next, I go in with the chopped up bell pepper and I cook that down for about 7, 8, 9, 10 minutes, whatever you need for them to soften and also get a little bit of color around the edges. Once the peppers are looking good, I add the garlic and I cook that off for about a minute or until it's really fragrant. Then to really enhance the tomato flavor of the sauce, I add in 2 teaspoons worth of tomato paste and I stir that through the vegetables to cook the raw tomato flavor out of it before adding in my spices. Here I've got 1 teaspoon of ground coriander, 1 teaspoon of smoked paprika and half a teaspoon of chili flakes. And I just like to stir that through the veg quickly, not to burn it, and then I add in the fresh tomatoes and stir them through. At this stage it's really important to season really well, so I go in with a big pinch of salt and then I let the sauce cook down. Okay, so now you'll want to cook this sauce down for about 20 to 30 minutes, and it will take longer or shorter depending on how juicy or watery your tomatoes are. What you're looking for is a really rich and thick tomato sauce without any obvious sort of water-like juices bubbling up to the surface. Because the tofu mixture that we're gonna put in here soon is quite loose, you don't want this to be too watery because then there's a chance of it mixing together and creating like a sauce rather than spheres that we want the tofu mixture to make in here, similar to like poached eggs. So be patient with the sauce, wait till it's nice and thick. I've got a few more minutes left here on mine, but then what I'll do is I'll use a wooden spoon to make little wells and pop the tofu mixture in. And this I think is easiest done using a ladle that you would normally use for a soup or a sauce. And I usually make about 5 or 6 spheres, but because I went a little bit ham here, I only made 4. But try to make 5 or 6 because then that means they will cook really well in the sauce. Once you've transferred the tofu mixture into the wells, you'll want to cover the skillet with a lid and allow it to steam under there for about 10 minutes. Then you can turn the heat off, take off the lid and allow it to sit for about 5 to 10 minutes to just chill out in the skillet and set even further. In the meantime, I like to slice up some bread or toast some bread, so I'm ready to serve it when it's all nice and set. Then to finish off the shakshuka, I like to sprinkle a little bit of ground turmeric onto each tofu sphere or tofu egg, if you will, to emulate the yolk and just actually give it a little bit more visual interest on the top. I also really like to top it off with some chopped fresh parsley for a bit of green and also a nice herbaceous flavor to finish it all. So when you eat this as a breakfast or brunch dish, it's really good with bread. I served it for you guys with sourdough, but we really like it with flatbreads, pita breads or robdas, and for me, I grab whatever gluten-free bread I have. I've even had it with corn tortillas, which is surprisingly good. But yeah, you can use any kind of bread, but something light and fluffy is usually very nice. If you are making it for lunch or dinner though, it's really nice served with a green crunchy salad, because it's a nice contrast to this sort of softer, rich shakshuka. What I really like about this dish especially is that it's for sharing. It's a really nice centerpiece at the middle of the table where everyone can just serve themselves or just eat straight from the pan. So when you're making it, it's nice to make it in a dish that looks really good. I just like this concept of sharing food. It's not something we do in Swedish food culture that much, eating from the same kind of dish. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you will make this. Like I said before, I'll leave a link to the recipe in the description box. And I look forward to seeing you next week when we are bringing you a 3-course meal for Valentine's. So make sure to stay tuned and I'll see you then. Take care!